get an update from our correspondent who is with the team. And also in wellness, we'll be telling you about glaucoma, its symptoms, and how to treat or manage the situation. We have these plus briefs coming up within the hour here on Joy News Midday Brief. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Okay, so like I promised, we will have some interviews. Someone will join me in the studio here for an interview to commemorate the International Women's Day. But first of all, today, March 8, marks International Women's Day with the theme Gender Agenda, Gaining Momentum. The day would usually focus on issues to do with empowering women economically, politically and socially, whilst highlighting their achievements. But how effective have these celebrations been giving momentum to the gender agenda? Find out in this report by Marion Toure.
There are many signs of this momentum on the African continent, from female entrepreneurship, which is driving growth in the region, to the fact that there are female government ministers or heads of state in South Africa, Ghana, Liberia, Malawi and Rwanda, where 56% of seats in its House of Deputies held by women is currently the only government in the world dominated by women, putting the East African country well ahead of established democracies such as the United States, United Kingdom and Japan, which all fall below the 25% mark. In Ghana, however, over the years, representation of women has been abysmally low. The number of women in parliament reduced considerably in 2008 from 25 to 20 in a 230-member parliament. 2012, however, saw the creation of 45 new constituencies, yet there are only 29 women in parliament. It should be emphasized, though, that this is the highest number since the post-colonial era. Joy News engaged a few women MPs on this year's theme and its relevance to the Ghanaian situation, asking if the gender agenda is gaining momentum in Ghana.
The gender agenda it involves so many things: improved maternal care, access to education for children, girls, and everything that concerns women. And I believe we have made some inroads, but there's more that we have to do. Women form more than 50% of the population, yet we are not being represented well. So it's high time we come together and then make our voices heard.
Women have made a lot of strides. And this has been possible by all women across board, those in the communities, those in leadership positions, those who are advocates. We've all come together to make a lot of strides. If one takes a cursory look at corporations and departments, one would see a number of women heading these places. And even in politics itself, there has been an increase in the number of women in parliament. And also the number of women who really contested the presidential positions. We had 3 women at least attempting to take the leadership of the country, and quite a number of them also stood for the position of vice president. So I think generally we are making a lot of strides.
Comfort Doye Gansa, MP Ada constituency, was of a different opinion.
If you look at the situation in Parliament, in 1992 we have 16 women. Now 2012 we have 29 women. It was the seats that we increased from 230 to 275 that brought out that increment. Otherwise, we have even lesser number in Parliament. If it will really work, then I think stakeholders, government and other institutions must come out and then make sure we give safe seats to women to contest.
Our male MPs were not left out, as a few of them shared their opinions with us on this year's theme and its relevance to Ghana.
Well, I think it is, because there's a consciousness. The advocacy groups and maybe a lot of groups have done some work, so the consciousness is there. We are ladies. Some rough things they don't want to be part of. Maybe that is what is keeping some of them away. But apart from that, the consciousness is there.
Women in this country, West Africa, Africa, and the entire world are beginning to occupy very sensitive positions. And I believe after Beijing, most women have come to the realization that they need to take center stage in most of the activities that surrounds them, be it economic, social, politics, and what have you. Our cultural backgrounds and social settings historically has always placed men ahead of women. So they must strategize well to catch up.
May I take this particular opportunity to congratulate women in the whole world for their day that they are going to celebrate tomorrow. The fact is that, as we see in Ghana, previously it's not like that. When you look at the level of women getting into political positions, I think they are gaining root. In the last 4 years, women empowerment was not as many as now. So I believe they are making inroads in terms of development in other political positions.
Many women groups have been strongly advocating affirmative action as the way forward. There is momentum, but not enough of it, as policymakers try to drive momentum on the gender agenda. Let's see businesses join in too. This really would make International Women's Day on 8 March 2013 a day to celebrate.
Okay, welcome back to the studio. Well, like I rightly said, International Women's Day is being observed today, and it has been observed since the early 1900s. Over time and distance, the struggle for equal rights for women has progressed. As ActionAid Ghana joins the rest of the world to mark this important day, it is asking all women to remain united, vigilant and tenacious for further sustainable change. We have been joined in the studio by Adjoa Kwating Kluviche, the country director of ActionAid Ghana. Good afternoon and thank you for joining us, madam.
Good afternoon and happy International Women's Day.
So what do I say every time?
Happy International Women's Day.
Happy International Women's Day. Okay, that's good. All right, so today is International Women's Day. Of course, I reckon that there still are certain challenges that as a country we face when it comes to protecting and promoting our women. What for you are the very important ones that we need to focus on, at least as we celebrate today?
I think, firstly, let me congratulate and celebrate all women in Ghana and in the world. And I think one of the things that for ActionAid Ghana is a critical issue, if we really want to ensure that we achieve the gender agenda, as it were, is to ensure that the legislative instrument to the Domestic Violence Act is drafted, passed, and implemented. I think it is also very important that we look at the issue of affirmative action. I was listening to your segment just before we started, and there was a comment that the numbers of female MPs has increased, and therefore women are making strides. I have to disagree with that. Although the numbers have increased, because we increased the number of districts, the proportion, the percentage is still around 10.4%, which is not good enough. Okay. If you look that the women in Ghana represent more than 50% of the population, we need to be represented at all spheres at that kind of level. So 10% to ActionAid Ghana is not good enough.
Okay, but then there's also the issue of violence against women and girls. How do we work at that? How do we solve that particular problem? Because there's been lots of advocacy going on, lots of education, but it doesn't seem to be ending.
I think the reason why we're having the challenges we have is that the violence against women and girls in Ghana is linked to the issue of our societal, cultural, religious context. It is also linked to the fact that women and girls have little social power, little personal power, little political power, little economic power. So the issues are very, very complex. And could that, but we can deal with it.
And could that explain why we have, for instance, forced marriages still ongoing in the north, for instance?
Yes, because the perception of women and girls is that we are less than men, less than boys, and that you can do to women and girls anything you wish. So I think the issue around violence against women and girls is linked, one, to the implementation of the Domestic Violence Act. There has to be the legal framework in which we can ensure that we protect, promote, and fulfill the rights of women and girls. But we also need to work at the societal and household level.
How do we do that?
We need to take responsibility for that.
Individuals?
As individuals, as a culture, as a people. We need to recognize that girls are of equal value to boys. So when girls are in the kitchen cooking, boys should not be in school or outside playing. Girls and boys should be in the kitchen cooking, and girls and boys should be playing or studying together equally. That way, girls are able to achieve educationally, which opens up doors for them politically, economically, socially.
But even when the doors are open, they still face the challenge of the glass ceiling, as some put it.
It's not glass, it's concrete.
Why is it concrete?
Because with glass, you can see where you are going and you can break through it. With concrete, you can't see where you're going and it's almost impossible to break through.
But some have broken through it.
Some have broken through.
So it should be glass, it shouldn't be concrete then.
Some of us have been lucky. And you can't use a few for the majority of women. Where ActionAid Ghana works, in over the 200 communities in which we work, we look at the opportunities that the girls have, and the opportunities are minimal. That is why.
How so?
Well, because if you look at it, in the communities in which we work, for example, despite the fact that we've been talking about educate your girl child, we still have girls not going to school. We still have girls being pulled out of school before the age of 18, being forced into marriage. We still have girls who are on their way to school being abducted into marriage. We still have women and girls who are called witches because they are intellectually bright. So the issues are there. You can't use a few women to judge the majority. And the majority of women in Ghana are still oppressed. So we have a responsibility. The government has a responsibility. Individuals have a responsibility. Mothers and fathers have a responsibility.
But then some also would argue then that individuals like yourself and groups that fight for the rights of women who have broken the glass ceiling, concrete ceiling, then you need to mentor these young girls.
Indeed,
so then they can also find their way maybe beyond the concrete ceiling.
Indeed. And I think that is something that women are doing all over Ghana in all sorts of forms. For example, our partner Abantu for Development is actually mentoring a group of young women. In ActionAid Ghana, the Northern Region Local Rights Program is actually working with a group of young women we call young female parliamentarians. We are working with them, mentoring them for politics, for women in decision making, for leadership. And it's happening in pockets everywhere. What we need is more synergy. What we need is for government to put their money where their mouth is. If we believe in women's rights as a country, then they need to resource the Ministry for Gender, Children and Social Protection. It doesn't trip off as easily off the tongue as Ministry for Women and Children's Affairs.
I know
and there's an issue that ActionAid Ghana has about the change of name, but we'll come back to that. They need to put their money where their mouth is. You need to resource that ministry and give that ministry the clout to work with other ministries to ensure that the gender agenda is there in finance, in health, in trade, in energy, everywhere. So that the Ministry for Women and Children's Affairs can hold those other ministries to account. At the moment, that isn't there. We need to look at affirmative action seriously to get more women into decision making, because that is where you hear the issues that affect women and children. With all due respect, men may think they understand the issues facing women. But they don't.
We try.
You try, and we appreciate the effort. But I think, as they say, he who wears the shoe knows where it pinches. So women need that space to be able to articulate and fight for the issues of concern to them.
Okay, so next year, by this time when we are commemorating International Women's Day again, what do you expect us as a nation to have achieved based on our celebration or commemoration from this year?
We want to have seen that the legislative instrument to the Domestic Violence Act is in place and being implemented fully. We want to see that the Domestic Violence Act is being implemented fully. We want to see that we have looked at issues around affirmative action.
Okay.
We want to make sure that we are ensuring that the rights of women and girls all over the country are protected, promoted, fulfilled. And we want a country that is zero tolerant of any form of violence against women and girls.
Okay, final question to you. Gender agenda, in your view, is it gaining momentum?
No.
Why not?
I think we aren't committed to gaining momentum. I think we're working in pockets.
By the we, is it the women themselves or as a country?
I think it's as a country. I think it is one of the issues that I think we need to address as a nation. When you hear people say women are their own worst enemy, that is not true. What you have is a society that does not embrace and welcome outspoken, articulate, strong, assertive women, because that breaks the mold of the stereotype of a good Ghanaian woman. We're supposed to be submissive, docile, soft-spoken, gentle, caring, and you can't get power if you're like that.
Thank you very much. Adjoa Kwatin Kluviche is the country director for ActionAid Ghana, and she's joined me in the studio to talk about International Women's Day. We'll say a big thank you to you, Adjoa. But we'll continue with our coverage of International Women's Day, and the World Bank has announced on International Women's Day that despite the steady economic growth in many African countries over the last few years, gains have not always translated into gender equality. We'll bring you more on that right after this break. Stay with us. Well, now the World Bank has announced on International Women's Day that despite the steady economic growth in many African countries over the last few years, gains have not always translated into greater gender equality or poverty reduction. To mark International Women's Day, the World Bank's Africa region launched 2 evidence-based initiatives to set up its commitment to improve gender programs in Africa.
The first is the Africa Gender Action Plan, a 5-year blueprint for the bank's gender-informed activities. Next is the Gender Innovation Lab that will bring scientific solutions through rigorous impact evaluation that will transform how the World Bank identify development solutions for some of its poorest clients. Combined, the World Bank Africa Gender Action Plan and Gender Innovation Lab will link scientific evidence to guide gender-related lending operations in Africa. World Bank Vice President for Africa, Makhtar Diop, says in the past decade, African countries have made some considerable strides when it comes to gender equality.
Going now against violence so maybe, Marcelo, you can start printing some T-shirts and give it to the boys around this room, say you don't hit a woman, okay? So we do like what is happening in Brazil right now when Jim Kim was there, but also some football stars. And since you are football star and the gender retire and the gender champion, you can maybe try to see how we can, us as a region here, try to do something and express our view about gender-based violence. But this is an important issue in our region, and particularly in conflict area.
On behalf of the World Bank, Diop said the new Gender Innovation Lab will provide development solutions to countries as it works to keep the momentum towards achieving gender equality in Africa. The Gender Innovation Lab, the first at the World Bank, brings science to improve delivery of its programs.
Staying on the gender agenda, cleaner cook stoves and rural electrification are all part of energy projects in Senegal that include women in the decision-making process, helping them improve their lives and the prosperity of their families. The following video, produced by the World Bank's Africa Energy team through the support of the Africa Renewable Energy Program and Access Program, AFRIA, and the Energy Sector Management Assistance Program, ESMAP, tells how the program supported the piloting of gender interventions in 5 countries within the African region, that's Senegal, Mali, Tanzania, Kenya, and Benin. This video showcases how integrating gender into energy planning and project design can lead to results on the ground, as it has been witnessed in Senegal's sustainable and participatory energy management project.
In a way, Senegal's energy transformation starts here, with Maimouna Diané preparing a family meal at her home on the outskirts of the capital, Dakar. She has a new cook stove that cuts her consumption of charcoal in half. That saves her an average of 250 francs per meal, which means she has more money to feed her 9 children. Women and their dependent children make up the majority of those living in poverty. So energy programs here are now being designed to include women in productive activities and leadership roles. These humble cook stoves, for instance, are manufactured and sold at a reduced cost. They're part of a wider effort to change how Senegal produces and consumes energy. The stoves are available through a government energy project financed in part by the World Bank. Buying and selling the stoves are providing opportunities for female entrepreneurs. And they not only save householders like Maimouna money, but far from Dakar, the project is also helping improve lives of rural women and helping protect the environment. While consumers are using less charcoal, producers are making more money. That's because production has become more efficient, and proceeds are going straight to communities. The landscape around Senegal's Tambacounda region was once stripped of trees that were burned for charcoal. But now, the project has helped villagers, many of them women, to produce charcoal as a sustainable resource. For instance, these cashew seedlings will grow quickly into trees. Dead branches can be transformed into charcoal, and the nuts will provide additional income. Marietou Niaya, a mother of 7, once sold firewood as fuel. Now, she's learned to make charcoal from the dead branches on her village-managed forest plot. City dwellers pay more for her charcoal than they did for firewood. Marietou also benefits from rural electrification. With recent charcoal sales, she bought these freezers and now makes extra money for her family by selling frozen treats. With electricity, she and other women have expanded opportunities to generate additional income. Marietou is not alone. An estimated 250,000 Senegalese are benefiting from the project, which works in tandem with Senegal's rural electrification program. Remote areas are being connected to the national grid, allowing women and their families greater access to a number of services and to a wider world. The country as a whole is relying more on sources of energy that are clean and dependable. Similar work is being done elsewhere in Africa. For example, energy projects that include input from women and give them the power to run businesses and change lives. The program encourages the participation of all beneficiaries, but especially women who traditionally may be left out of meetings because of their childcare and household responsibilities. As important consumers of energy, women are empowered by having a say in community decisions. In this Senegalese village, the rural electrification program has helped Midday Niaye and other mothers get organized and share the cost of this solar-powered mill. With their savings and training provided, other villagers have planted fruit orchards, or reared livestock. Habi So cultivates honey. So from a new cook stove to improved charcoal production to better livelihoods and stronger economy, Senegal is transforming its economy, its landscape, and the lives of its people, especially of women who are major consumers of energy and are key to pulling families up from poverty.
Well, good to know that some women in some parts of Africa are being empowered to fend for themselves. And here in Ghana, Vice President Kwesi Arthur met with captains of industry to discuss ways to save the economy, beg your pardon, I'll be talking a lot of energy today, whilst guarding against what they describe as a rising cost of doing business in Ghana.
A truth hitting industry in the country is the extra cost incurred due to consistent power outages. Beyond this are issues on election year economic management and high interest rates. Private Enterprises Foundation President Asari Akufu expressed worry about the imbalance between the rate of Ghana's economic growth and developmental achievement.
We have so many challenges, as my colleague here said, but we'll be focusing on our side. We want to discuss more problems with the energy sector and the inefficiencies in the utility companies. That's one. And also, of course, the cost of borrowing, which the Secretary has tried to explain it. But I think this morning's meeting, it is in those areas that we will want to emphasize.
The meeting, he noted, was to find permanent solutions to these challenges. President of the Association of Ghana Industries, Nana Aferi, said the Ghanaian market was too open, a phenomenon which accounts for the importation of cheap, inferior goods, which unfairly compete with locally manufactured goods. At the meeting, which included relevant sector ministers, Vice President Emisa Arthur said government is working hard to break the fiscal excess cycle, which bedevils the economy after every election.
In the meetings in Takoradi, I was told that we needed transparency in the management of the economy, and that transparency required that we meet regularly with the movers and shakers and get them to give us a sense of how they felt about issues quickly, and we thought that you could adjust better to the petroleum prices. You wanted an agreement on election year management of the economy, and that electoral cycle and its effect on your business is something that I felt you were very passionate about.
The Private Enterprises Foundation has also suggested government's moderation of the public sector, as well as public debt, to reduce the impact on private business. The rest of the meeting was held behind closed doors.
Well, let's still do something related to private businesses, because the Ghana Revenue Authority has embarked on a distress action to retrieve revenues from debtors in the industrial city of Tema. My colleague Yafusu Ajimfi is with the team and joins us on the line for an update. Hello, good afternoon to you, Ya.
Hello, good afternoon.
Okay, which companies has the GRA visited so far?
Okay, Smart, for now, this Management and Compliance Enforcement Unit under the Ghana Revenue Authority, which has been embarking on a nationwide distress action today, went to Tema, and then the company named Unique Concerns Ghana Limited, which is an efficient company, was today visited, and then they are said to be owing an amount of over 400 million Ghana cedis. That is debt accruing from January 2006 to 2007. Hello, Smart.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, and then as I speak now, the assets of the company has been seized, and then the authorities of the company are being taken to the CID headquarters for investigations. But talking with the principal officer, Geshon Akabli, who led the team, and he says some investigations were done, and then indicated that the company had been changing port of loading to obtain lower sales from the inspection company. So this was what the investigation revealed, and then that is how come it has been
Okay, but is this unique concerns? Are they the only ones the exercise is targeted at, or there are other companies as well that will be visiting?
So there are other companies involved, which were not named as at our visit, but then for today it was Unique Concerns Limited that encountered this distress action.
And what has been the reaction of the management of Unique Concerns?
Okay, they reacted in a calm manner, speaking to the location manager, Mohammed Muzambi. He said it looks like the company has been changing management since 2006. And then this is a new management that has been operating the company that is about a year ago. So they are calm with it. They want further investigations to be taken, and then whatever the outcome is, they would comply with.
But finally, have the GRA given you any indication how much they're looking at recouping from this distress action?
Okay, not yet, but then they said they have done some investigations, which some 10 other companies, fishing companies, who have been evading tax by just transferring their ports. So for now, they are just going to intensify. They don't want to give out the names so that those recalcitrant people would evade this action. So for now, they don't want to reveal who the companies are for now.
Okay.
But then they'll be embarking on this action. It's a nationwide action which is being embarked by the Debt Management and Compliance Enforcement.
Okay. All right. Okay, we'll leave it there for now. Yeah. Thank you very much, my colleague Yafu Swajin, for giving us an update on the distress action by the Ghana Revenue Authority. But let's move on to our other colleague, Adelaide Arthur, who is covering the Narcotics Board. Ghana Narcotics Board is launching a report on its 2012 activities. Adelaide joins me on the line with some updates for that. Good afternoon to you, Adelaide.
Good afternoon, Mark.
Okay, so what have the Narcotics Board been telling us so far as part of the report that they are launching today?
Yeah, they are actually launching the International Narcotics Control Board's annual report for 2012. And the report, as I'm speaking to you now, it has not yet been launched because the invited guest who is supposed to unveil the report is not yet in. They are waiting on him. But then I understand the report outlines drug movements within countries in 2012, as well as efforts made by governments of member states of the United Nations in stopping drug trafficking. You know, it's a global because it's an annual report for the International Narcotics Control Board. So I'm told on 5th March in Vienna, they launched in Vienna, Austria, and they were supposed to launch it simultaneously here in Ghana. But then, because of the budget and all that, they were unable to do it. But then, the key team for the INCB's annual report is shared responsibility, because the International Narcotics Control Board is actually calling for renewing the spirit of shared responsibility in drug control. So they are calling on countries, member states, to come together and work together to control drug trafficking.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Adelaide, and we'll hope to get more update from you later on when the report is finally launched.
Okay.
All right. Meanwhile, the International Narcotics Control Board, that's INCB, says while cannabis remains the most widely cultivated, trafficked and abused drug in Africa, amphetamine-type stimulants are seen as a new threat in the region. According to the Vienna-based International Narcotics Control Board, there has also been an increase in levels of cocaine abuse in West Africa, as in recent years, the region has emerged as a transit area for narcotics, especially cocaine from South America to the European market. This revelation is contained in the INCB annual report for 2012, which was launched on Thursday in London. The report notes that the abuse of and trafficking in tramadol, a synthetic analgesic not under international control, has become a major concern on the continent. And back here in Ghana, the Narcotics Board is going to launch that same report, as Adelaide indicated. They're still awaiting the guest speaker at that function, and we'll get you updates on that in our subsequent bulletins. But we'll take a breather here on the midday brief. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Now, policy analysts are calling for a review of the Presidential Transition Act to correct some lapses that were identified in the latest handover of power after the 2012 election. Key amongst the loopholes identified is the silence of the act on the processes involved when an incumbent government has to hand over to itself. The areas for possible review were discussed at a forum organized by the Institute of Economic Affairs, which sponsored the act.
The Presidential Transition Act, established by an Act of Parliament in May 2012, seeks to deepen the country's democracy by ensuring the smooth transfer of political power from one elected government to another. The Act came into effect for the first time after the 2012 presidential and parliamentary elections, and it was during this process that some key challenges were identified with the Act. The analysts, among others, are also calling for a review of the two-day timeline between the election of the Speaker and swearing in of members of Parliament and the inauguration of the President. Second Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Joe Garte, said the Transition Act did not also clearly spell out the transition roles of MPs and the other government agencies.
For me, there are two fundamental difficulties with the Transition Act. And the first difficulty can be seen from its heading. Its heading is Presidential Transition Act. That assumes that the only change that occurs is with the presidency. The second flaw is that it does not seem to look at the situation that happened this year. One government handing over to itself. And the Supreme Court has made it clear that even if it's the same government, it has over to itself. Attorney General versus J.H. Mensah, when the question of whether ministers should be vetted again. Yes, even if it's the same Attorney General going to become Attorney General after 4 years, after the second term of the president, he must go once again to vet it. There's nothing automatic about it.
It was for this and many other reasons that the Institute of Economic Affairs, IEA, held the workshop to review its implementation to ensure its application in 2016 would be much better. Policy analyst at the IEA, Dr. Michael Ofori, nonetheless chided MPs and government for failing to fully comply.
The President duly made an appointment to the transition team as required by the law. However, the number of people on the transition team, in my view, could have been less, as this was not a transfer of power from one administration to another. Indeed, there is a need to put a cap on the numbers or on the numbers in the transition team when an incumbent is re-elected. Again, turning to implementation, the President also appointed an advisory council. But the advisory council, the rationale behind the advisory council is a conflict resolution body. And in my view, it may not have been entirely necessary for this transition.
He described the non-adherence to some portions as a breach of law, a precedent that was dangerous to the country's fledgling democracy. Former Second Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Professor Michael Quay, cited some historical incidents he says suggest successive governments are not so keen about transition procedures.
I remember very well in the year 2001, after the 2000 elections, the protocol department started to talk about handing over. And some of us were very vehement about any handing over as such. I said, now we are in the constitutional era. There was not going to be any handing over. And we shall go as it is done in America and as per our constitution. It seemed news to some people. And some people were even offended that the outgoing president was not going to sort of hand over formally and make a speech to the incoming president. At the same time, some people also, guided by our history, did not want that kind of speech that preceded Liman becoming president, and for anybody to be warning anybody, and so on and so forth.
He called for a collaborative effort by all policy analysts, government, the public and the media to ensure the Transition Act is well consolidated to serve as the blueprint for the transfer of political power in 2016. Participants are expected to adopt a draft communique after the workshop that would highlight some key changes in the Transition Act to be forwarded to Cabinet for consideration.
But before we get you in shape for wellness, let's share this information. Our news team chanced on this dangerous site at Abese in the La municipality and thought we should share with you. This pole, residents say, finally got burned 3 days ago after periodic fire sparks over the last 3 months. The timely intervention of the fire service saved the situation, and according to residents of Abese attempts to get authorities to change the pole have proven futile. Well, that's really sad that the pole has been, not in a good shape. It's not been well for 3 months, and they really didn't do anything about it until it finally got bent. But at least we are glad that the fire service was able to prevent a massive disaster, what I think would have been a massive disaster. But someone is here who would try to keep you well and in shape, not like the electricity pole. Jennifer, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon,
But it's true, the pole wasn't well.
It wasn't well.
Probably should have watched a bit of wellness, but I stayed in shape.
Well, you know what they say, an apple a day, so a bit of wellness a day.
Yeah, I would have kept the pole alive. I like my saying, oh gee, I'm too smart for myself sometimes, you know.
Yeah, that's why you're called smart.
You know. So what do you have for us in wellness?
We're looking at your eyes today. Yeah, I know you wear glasses.
Yeah.
But not every eye disorder is that obvious.
Oh.
So we're talking about a silent one today.
Okay, over to you.
For wellness today, we're talking about glaucoma. Now, without warning or obvious symptoms to the patient, it gradually reduces the quality of your sight, damages the eye, and may even lead to blindness. Once occurred, visual damage is mostly irreversible, and this has been described as the silent blinding disease or the sneak thief of sight. Let's get some education. Well, I hope you're feeling better after that little bit of wellness, because it's tension all around in our international briefs today. Kenya's presidential race has tightened as Uhuru Kenyatta's lead narrowed over his main rival, Prime Minister Raila Odinga, raising the prospect of a second-round runoff. And North Korea says it is scrapping all non-aggression pacts with South Korea, closing its hotline with Seoul, and shutting their shared border point. It looks like somebody was influenced largely by Michael Jackson, but that's all we have for you in our briefs, Smart.
Just say you think that Justin Bieber is acting like MJ.
No, I think he wants to be.
Well, there's nothing wrong. Maybe he's drawing inspiration from it.
Seriously,
a lot of
the American gloves. Did you see the entry?
Yeah. Well, a lot of the, American acts draw inspiration from MJ. Asha has admitted to it. Lots of them. So leave the poor boy alone. If he wants to be MJ. Well, it's been the Midday Brief for Joy News, International Women's Day edition, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what are you doing on International Women's Day?
Oh, I'm being an international woman.
Okay. So she says, okay, so that's our package for now. We'll be back on Monday with the Midday Brief again. But of course, our hourly news briefings start at 2 p.m. So stay with us. Her name is Jennifer Jenasante.
And he is Nia Kofi Smart Happy.
We'll see you.